To quote the Duke of Sussex from his January 2023 interview with Anderson Cooper on CBS's 60 Minutes, silence is betrayal. It has been almost 1 year since African Parks board member Prince Harry barely acknowledged the allegations against one of his favorite charities.
Kinsey Schofield reveals Prince Harry's shocking silence. Allegations against African Parks, a charity he supports. Kinsey Schofield exposes the disturbing truth. Why won't Harry speak out? Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. You won't believe this. Prince Harry is refusing to speak up about a massive scandal involving African Parks, a charity he's been deeply involved with for years.
Telling the Daily Mail he passed on their concerns to the higher-ups. Translation, he'd washed his hands of the situation. But the stories circulating keep getting worse, and Harry's silence is deafening. According to Newsweek, Harry's scandal-plagued African Parks charity is facing new, heartbreaking allegations. The latest accusations relate to an incident that took place after African Parks called in Omnia Strategy, a law firm established by Cherie Blair, the wife of former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, to conduct an investigation. Newsweek says that Survivor International, which campaigns for Indigenous people, said it was told by Baka tribes people that a group of women had been promised a meeting with management about the destruction of crops by elephants. Paul Renaud, who works on the organization's conservation campaign, told Newsweek the members of the community had an appointment with a high-level African Parks manager, and the person wasn't there, so the women started to complain. The guards refused to let them stay and forced them to leave by whipping them and beating them, which led to a woman being actually trampled on and losing her baby. African Parks responded to a request for comment by Newsweek, saying that their guards reported the alleged incident in May 2024. In turn, African Parks immediately shared this information with Omnia Strategy. They said, as a result, it is subject to their ongoing independent investigation. African Parks has committed to respond to Omnia's findings at the conclusion of their investigation, which we now expect in early 2025. Survivor International's Paul Renaud responded by saying, this shows the violence is still ongoing, even though it's turned into an international scandal. Even as that investigation is ongoing, an event like this led to violence. Yet African Parks is trying to present things as improving and talking about a zero-tolerance approach.
Allegations of violence and human rights violations are piling up, yet Harry remains silent. Why is he ignoring this? Is he protecting his image, or is there something darker behind the scenes? Today, we're diving deep into what Kinsey Schofield just revealed about Harry's silence.
Newsweek notes that the original allegations that sparked the investigation included an account of a ranger leading a woman into the rainforest and essaying her as she held her baby. Elaine was quoted by the Mail on Sunday in January 2024, describing how the ranger said, "I'll shoot you," as he led her away from her home. She added, "I was holding my baby while being SA'd and trying to protect him. My first reaction had been to protect my baby. It was very violent." The Duke has had plenty of time to respond, plenty of opportunities to respond to these horrific stories. In September, Harry traveled to New York City, where he attended the UN General Assembly High-Level Week and Climate Week New York, with engagements for African Parks, among others. Harry's African Parks events were the only events that did not include media access. Even Newsweek's Jack Royston called Prince Harry out for his silence, saying, "I think that is slightly outrageous, to be honest, because Prince Harry has faced calls to resign from the board of directors, and he has resisted those calls. So, if he's going to continue to represent this organization in spite of these profoundly serious allegations, and he's going to continue advocating for African Parks, it does feel slightly cowardly to do it behind closed doors and away from public accountability. I've not seen or heard any particular justification for why it's remaining private." Cowardly. What an appropriate description.
Let's start with the basics. African Parks is a major conservation charity, managing 22 parks across Africa. Reports allege African Parks rangers have committed violence, including beatings and sexual assault. Concerns were brought to Harry's attention nearly a year ago, yet he has done nothing publicly.
Back in January, an investigation by the Mail on Sunday discovered deeply disturbing accusations of violence, SA, and torture of locals in rainforests of the Republic of the Congo by guards managed and paid for by the African Parks charity. Prince Harry was its president for 6 years until enjoying a promotion to its governing board of directors just last year. The Mail on Sunday exposed first-hand testimonials from locals alleging violent encounters with the charity, forcing them to stop entering forests where they have foraged, fished, hunted, and found medicines for years. One witness who claims he saw a brutal attack by African Parks guards says that he wished Prince Harry would use his power and notoriety to intervene in order to stop the pain and suffering caused to their community. Harry has not. Survivor International, referenced earlier, was one of the first to approach Prince Harry about the alleged abuse in May of last year. Harry responded saying that he would make the organization aware of the situation. He provided no evidence of that conversation. After the accusations went public, a spokesperson for Archewell told the Mail on Sunday when the Duke became aware of these serious allegations, he immediately escalated them to the CEO and chairman of the Board of African Parks, the appropriate people to handle next steps. There was no improvement, so Survivor International formally asked Prince Harry to show solidarity for the locals and victims by quitting. They said, "We hope that his stepping down from the board of directors will give a clear signal to this organization that human rights abuses in the name of conservation are not tolerated anymore." Obviously, Prince Harry did not quit his post. In a formal statement responding to the Mail on Sunday's investigation, African Parks said, "We have a zero-tolerance policy for any form of abuse and are committed to upholding the rights of local and Indigenous people." The Duke of Sussex once said of the charity, "The African Parks model is exactly what conservation should be about, putting people at the heart of the solution." The charity manages 22 parks in 12 African countries with 1,400 guards patrolling protected land almost the size of Britain. They claim that they save wildlife by working with local communities. I mean, if these reports are true, working with local communities is actually the opposite of what is transpiring. This year, African Parks was also accused of brutality in Zambia.
Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Why isn't Harry speaking out? This is a man who built his brand on social justice and mental health advocacy. He had no problem calling out his own family. But now? Silence. Should Harry step down? Let me know in the comments.
Where locals have the right to sustainably harvest natural resources such as fish, antelope, and rabbits. According to the Mail, African Parks has managed the area since 2008 in partnership with the government. The charity says this is its only project where management responsibilities are not fully integrated, with conservation law enforcement remaining under the supervision of the Department of National Parks and Wildlife. The report explains that intimidation is a key strategy. In September of 2021, a marketplace was sprayed with gunfire, injuring villagers and innocent children, suspects unknown. Several locals told the Mail that the market shooting happened immediately after rangers arrested an individual found with antelope meat. This incident sparked demonstrations and rock throwing that damaged vehicles, including 2 belonging to African Parks. Meanwhile, locals within one of Africa's most important wetlands claim they are suffering a campaign of intimidation to stop them from fishing and hunting on their own land, while tourists arrive on safari expeditions that can cost up to £5,000 a day. One outspoken villager said, "Our home has become a nightmare that frightens us every day. Another local who was victim to gunfire begged the African parks to leave, saying they have turned this place into hell. African Park said multiple incidents had been reported to the criminal justice system, and rangers were found to have acted in self-defense due to armed threats from suspected poachers. In a 2022 annual report, the charity admitted that it had seen a number of unfortunate interactions between residents and the park rangers, which have led to both injuries and fatalities. African Parks currently has some of the biggest donors in conservation, mostly Americans and Europeans. Howard Buffett, son of Warren, is one of those familiar names. Plus, Rob Walton, heir to the Walmart fortune, pledging $100 million over 5 years, one of the biggest single donations in the history of conservation. In a recent article by the Financial Times, they explain to African Park supporters the organization is one of the most important conservation organizations in the world. To its detractors, it's a sinister land-grabbing machine and practitioner of a militaristic model of wilderness protection they call fortress conservation. Why should these white men in shorts, in the words of one former official from an African country who dealt closely with African parks, build a state within a state where your basic approach to local people is they're a pain in the arse, that they'd be better off somewhere else?
Now, let's get to the real bombshell. Royal expert Kinsey Schofield has just exposed the real reason behind Harry's silence. This isn't just about African parks. This is about image control. Harry and Meghan have spent years curating their reputation as global humanitarians. But if Harry acknowledges this scandal, it shatters the illusion.
African Park's chief executive told the Financial Times that he wanted to raise African Park's tally of landscapes to 30 by the end of the decade. He also claims that weapons are necessary, both to fight off poachers and to protect rangers from dangerous animals. He says since African Parks was founded, 54 rangers have died in action. The organization admitted to the Financial Times that they were angry about a recent book slamming them. The book is by an investigative journalist named Olivier Van Beeman, titled Entrepreneurs in the Wild. According to the Financial Times, it describes African Parks as a shady, militaristic organization with too much power and too little accountability. The nervous chief exec admitted it starts badly on page 1, and that's the best page in the book. African Parks disputes the numerous claims in Van Beeman's book and admits that they are worried about the potential impact on donors, who would this year fund African Parks' $130 million budget. In fact, there was an internal memo sent to staff warning that the organization suddenly seems to be coming under a coordinated media attack. Harry and Meghan Playbook 101, from writers peddling a narrative that pits nature conservation against humanity. While African Parks argue that private donors literally couldn't give a damn, they are worried that those with greater public exposure might cut and run. This is why I constantly ask myself if Prince Harry is just African Park's puppet, a mascot to distract from their bad behavior.
Kinsey Schofield says it's proof that their activism is performative. All talk, no real action. African Parks is funded by billionaire elites, Walmart heir Rob Walton, and Howard Buffett. Critics argue it forces out local communities. One local said, "Our home has become a nightmare."
However, as Newsweek points out, ultimately it appears to have been the other way around, as the allegations against rangers have caused a reputational crisis for Harry. Quoted in the Times, Van Beeman said, "I think Prince Harry and others on the board should question the organization's model, its practices, and governance, and reconsider their own roles." The book's author also told the Financial Times that African Parks had tried to block his research, saying, "It's not my purpose to burn them, but the way they react really gives you the impression they're hiding something." I mean, back to New York. Why weren't media allowed in their, events? That's bizarre. In the article in the Times earlier this year, Van Beeman exposed torture testimonials from one former African Parks ranger who explained, you tie someone up, hands and feet tied together behind his back, and you hang him on a stick between two branches, and then you spin him around while you hit him. It doesn't last long because it hurts a lot. When he hangs there, he says everything you want, even things he doesn't know. Survivor International spoke to the Financial Times, explaining that, in their opinion, African Parks is one of the worst actors in terms of fortress conservation, of violence by park rangers and land grabbing in the name of conservation. They argue that conservation often rested on the racist misconception that Indigenous people cannot be trusted to look after land and wildlife, of which they have been guardians for generations. I wouldn't trust Prince Harry with a goldfish, let alone a piece of sacred land, but here we are. When the Financial Times asked the African Parks chief exec about the argument that Indigenous people are the best guardians of their wildlife, he replied, "You've got to be careful about over-romanticizing these things." What a gent.
Prince Harry is just a puppet for them. So, what happens now? Will Harry finally break his silence? One thing is clear. This scandal is not going away. The pressure is mounting. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Smash that subscribe button for more royal controversies. I'll see you in the next one. Like, share, and subscribe.